Lemonada.
Welcome to Worth It for the Minnesota Star Tribune. I'm Nicole Norfleet. Each week on the show, we share the happenings around Minnesota that we think are worth your time, your attention, and your money. Today in the show, grading Minnesota's lakes, tips for using cannabis as the state prepares for legal flower, and a children's story about a seemingly magical dog that still resonates 25 years after it was first published. We'll find out why. But before I get to that, I just need to tell you, the last few weeks, I've had family staying with us from overseas. So they've been with us for about 3 weeks now, and it's been really fun. I've gone to the Bell Museum, which I'd never done before. We were at Como Zoo, but it's obviously very tiring. And so I thought we were kind of winding down this week because they're leaving on Sunday. But then I get a call from my partner who was at Target and was like, I just want the boys have a really good summer. We have my nephews and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. She's very sweet. She's like, don't be mad. I'm like, you're not giving me any details as to what you got. I come home and there is a giant inflatable pool that is blocking the garage. Squirting water out of it. There's little crabs and sharks and little balls. And I just have to, it's a lot, but I can't help it. We were already playing on it today. And anyway, hope you're enjoying the last few weeks of summer. I know we are. Let's get into it. What would we do without our lakes? Minnesota would be a totally different place. And the State Department of Natural Resources is charged with keeping track of how the lakes are doing. In fact, the agency is releasing grades for about 3,000 of the most popular lakes in the state. Star Tribune environmental reporter Greg Stanley and photographer Anthony Souffle visited some of the best and worst lakes. They're here to tell us about what they found. Greg, Anthony, hey.
Hey, thanks so much for having us.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. So, Greg, when you say grading lakes, what do you mean? Is it B+, C-, or what does that mean?
Yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's almost like a teacher grade. They went through, gave them a score from 0 to 100, and they just based that letter grade right on that. So it goes straight from A+ to C to F. And I've never seen this before, but I guess in Minnesota there's an F+.
F+.
So yes, you can even get an F+ in your report card.
Gold star.
You failed, but in a good way.
Failed, but in a good way.
Just barely.
When did they start doing this?
So they started in 2023, and they're going to keep doing it, it seems like, in the coming years. How they got to 3,000 was that's the amount of lakes they had good solid data on. So they're pretty much going to keep adding lakes to this as they get more and more data.
And the grades, what are they based off of?
It's based off of really dozens of studies and stats that they find in these lakes. And it comes down to pretty much three umbrellas: how clear the water is, the water clarity and quality, the biological health inside the lake, and then finally the watershed, how clear, how developed, how natural the watershed, where the lake is collecting all the water that drains into it.
So you wrote about a couple lakes in this first batch of stories. One of them was Mitchell Lake. Where is that exactly? And can you tell me why you zeroed in on that lake?
Yeah, it's a little north of Brainerd, and it caught our eye just looking through the data. I was looking for something that was kind of surprising. And what we found was this was the only lake in the state that had a perfect score for its fish health. And that doesn't mean it's the best lake to fish in.
Okay.
But it just means that fish are doing the best there, specifically the variety of species they have. So all these rare minnows that have been wiped out of most of our lakes are still thriving there. We have some really cold, deep water fish like Cisco that only live in the very deep, clearest water we have that are also surviving, along with these minnows that never leave the shoreline. And what really jumped out to me is it's this place. Most of the A's are exactly where you expect them to be. They're up in the boundary waters where everything is
less people.
Yeah, completely natural still. But this lake, it's used. It's got I think we counted out about 100 cabins on it. There's lots of boats on it, but it still had this perfect fish score.
I don't think I've ever heard of this lake.
Yeah, it's kind of overlooked. It was actually the hardest one to report on because no one wanted to talk to me about it. Yes. They don't want people finding out about it. They don't want people coming to it. They're really worried about people bringing in invasive species and things like that in their boats. But
they're like, shh.
Yeah, yeah.
Secret.
I don't know. One of the coolest things when we were out there, we canoed out there, and just in the middle of the lake, you can see all the 100 or so docks out in the middle of the water, but you can hardly see any of the cabins. They're all kind of buried away, and that's kind of the secret sauce, I guess, of keeping a lake healthy. Is you have all these trees, and they were able to keep all these really old trees, and they hid their cabins a little bit deep, where they have to walk to the shoreline, and it really protected those shores and all those minnows and loons and everything else you want in a northern lake.
Yeah, it's really obvious when you get there how offset those cabins are from the water. A lot of the lakes that we go to, they're right next to the
super
water line.
populated.
Yeah, exactly. And this, you'd see the dock, and then you'd kind of see stairs leading up into the woods, and then the cabin would be tucked way back in there, and that does a lot to preserve the shoreline.
Anthony, you accompanied Greg and took pictures and videos. Let's hear what it sounds like. What kind of bird is that?
It's a loon.
That's a loon?
Yeah.
I don't know why it sounded different to me.
No, that's a loon. Greg and I canoed that lake in the evening and in the morning, and we had this set of loons that would just kind of stay with the boat for a little bit. They were really habituated to people, so that's what you're hearing there.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you take a dip in this lake?
Yeah, so my dad's a scuba diving instructor, so I've been diving since I was in high school, and so any opportunity I can to get in the water and kind of show people what's under the surface, I'm always about. So with this being the cleanest of the lakes, I decided I didn't want to do the worst of the lakes, but the cleanest of the lakes, sure, I'll go look around at the bottom of that. So, I put on my whole scuba diving rig, and I actually dove off of a canoe, which is a different experience.
Yeah,
First time I ever got
that.
to see someone jump off a canoe.
Yeah.
He was on a canoe with you? Is that what okay.
Yeah. So diving off of a canoe was a new experience, but I went down to about 25, 30 feet or so, and we were able to get photos of those minnows that he was talking about, and that's actually, I think that's going to be the lead image that we're talking about for that story. So
it's beautiful. It's like the blue-green. You can see them like their little shimmering bodies through the water. It's really wonderful. It's
one of my favorite things is just to take people underwater and kind of show them things that they wouldn't normally be able to see. From the surface, it looks like kind of any other lake, but once you go underneath the water, you get a little bit of a different feel.
What's funny is that Anthony, one of my favorite photos of myself as a reporter was when we were at the zoo. Oh no, the petting zoo inside the mall. Yeah, and this lemur. I was doing an interview, and the lemurs were jumping on my shoulder, and he just got it like right in mid jump. So I feel like you're really good when it comes to like wildlife.
I grew up on a farm. I'm comfortable around animals. So,
so obviously Mitchell was one of the higher ranking lakes. Can we move on to what was it? Lake Ochita?
Ochita.
Where is that?
So that's down near Worthington in the very southern border, close to Iowa. And that is in I think it's a 6-way tie for the lowest score in the state. So the most unhealthy lake. Yeah, the unhealthiest lake we've got.
And when you went there, could you tell that it was probably one of the worst lakes, or?
It looks like dull pea soup. I mean, that's how opaque the water is. And it was a challenge to photograph just because you're trying to show people just how opaque this water is and how just there's no water clarity to it whatsoever. But if you look around the lake, it's completely surrounded by agricultural fields. And so it just gets so much agricultural runoff.
And I would think that would be something that's impacting a bunch of different lakes, that pollution. Could you explain how that can affect the biodiversity? Yeah,
it's a big problem throughout most of the state, and they're dealing with it in different ways. But mainly with all that runoff comes a lot of nutrients. That nutrient fuels algae blooms. Those algae blooms make it harder for sunlight to reach, and then it starts the cycle where native plants die off, a lot of native fish die off, and then the only fish that seem to thrive and survive in those kind of waters are carp.
That's what the Ochita has, a lot of carp, right?
Lots of carp, hundreds of thousands of pounds potentially of carp. And once you get that much, they start making things worse. So they continuously dig up the bottom of these shallow lake beds. I think Ochita is only about 4.5 feet deep. These shallow waters, they're continuously kicking up that bottom, and then that muck just makes it worse. It just makes sunlight harder to reach.
I'm guessing you also didn't take a dip in that one. Did you dip the camera? How did you even get that photo?
I did wear, I put on a dry suit. So the water didn't actually, it doesn't actually touch my skin.
Okay.
I'm fully encased, essentially. Aquaman. And I did get in that one. It's like Greg said, it's only about 4 feet deep. So it's kind of funny. You can basically anywhere you can just step out of the boat and you're in, standing, waiting height or whatever. So I did get in that body of water too, in an effort to kind of show the just the opacity of that water. That's really kind of the story there. It's just like the water quality is just a nightmare. I mean, Greg has this story about taking a shot glass and putting a quarter at the bottom of it, and what was it, like 4 inches of water?
Yeah. It wasn't quite a shot glass. It was one of those old clear cups, and I just put a quarter at the bottom of it. I think about 3 inches of water. You just watch the quarter disappear.
Is there any hope to improving this lake?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to take a lot of work and some changes and installing buffers, but they're actually undertaking a pretty extensive effort right now. They're going to try to drain the lake for about 2 years, which is it sounds extreme, but it's kind of what helps these old shallow prairie lakes is they're meant to rise and fall with the rains and droughts and have these periodic droughts where the water level goes down a little bit. That kills off fish and gives plants a little chance to rebound and sunlight to get in there and reseed. And they just haven't been able to do it because people don't like fluctuating lakes, and we've kept it really stagnant and still and high.
I'm thinking of that lake over near William O'Brien that accidentally got dried up. And it just looked...
The valve got stuck.
Yeah, the valve got stuck, right?
Valve's gone.
Valve's gone. People are just scooping out fish and throwing it into the other water. Yeah.
Yep. So they're essentially going to try that over 2 years, draw it down. Hopefully the carp will die off and clean water will come back in. And if that works, it'll make a big difference.
It seems like, I don't know, these grades aren't really that high to me. I don't know if you collectively know kind of what an average scores we were getting for our lakes. It seems like a C doesn't seem that, I mean, if I went home with a C, my mom would be like, did you study? Kind of thing.
In certain parts of the state, C is cause for alarm. But, in other parts of the state, so Minneapolis, for example, most of the lakes in Minneapolis are, I want to say like D's or D pluses.
Yeah, just from a statistics point, I mean, those lakes are the most visited lakes likely in the state. I mean, with the amount of people that go to them every single day that are living right around them, all the runoff that, happens into them, people with their pets in them, people with their boats in them, just making all this use of the lake. And like, for me, from my standpoint, when I was photographing these stories for the stories that we did on the city lakes, that was really one of the things that I tried to focus on, was just how many people are using these lakes. How are you guys using these lakes? Because that is what is having the biggest, impact on them. It's just like the amount of people that live in and around them. And so like Greg was saying, the fact that they're D's and C's is actually kind of amazing when you consider it.
And obviously we're not going to be like draining any of these lakes to improve things. But is there any way to like improve a score of like an urban lake? Yeah,
they do it in a lot of little ways. Mainly the one that's worked the best is adding ponds, wetlands, kind of trying to replace those old livers, those natural livers of water quality that can suck up let sediment and pollutants and toxins essentially filter out before they get into the lake. That's what all those swamps and marshes did, that they drained to build up the city.
Well, if you want to look up your favorite lake, check out the show notes. We've got a link to a tool that displays lake stats like baseball cards almost. Greg, Anthony, super fun to have you here. Thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
We'll take a quick break, but hang around because next up, we'll hear about safety tips when getting high.
If you like Worth It, you should know it's just a tiny taste of all that the Minnesota Star Tribune has to offer. We've got an all-access pass to everything Minnesota, from outdoor adventures to the hottest food spots you've never heard of. From puzzles and games to the best concerts and happenings around the state. It's all here all the time. So subscribe to the Minnesota Star Tribune. It's a great deal. Go to startribune.com/worthit to subscribe. That's worth it to subscribe, all one word.
So cannabis flower is coming soon to a dispensary near you. More dispensaries are expected to open over the next year. So it's a good time to check in on some best practices to stay safe when you're getting high. Star Tribune reporter Elliot Hughes worked up a safety guide to using cannabis, and he's here with some tips. Hey, Elliot.
Hey, Nicole, how's it going?
So a lot of people are anticipating the ability to legally purchase flower in Minnesota. There are a few ways to partake, like smoking, vaping, and edibles. There may be some first-timers trying things out. So let's talk about the health issues to consider with each different method. So smoking, what are some of the pros and cons for that?
First of all, it is pretty similar to smoking cigarettes. Cannabis smoke contains a lot of the same carcinogens and irritants that you can find in tobacco smoke. But it seems a little unclear yet, like what kind of effect cannabis smoke has on diseases like lung cancer and emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. People also smoke cannabis differently than they smoke cigarettes. The stereotypical cigarette smoker is someone who smokes one or more a day, maybe a pack. Your stereotypical cannabis smoker maybe doesn't smoke an entire joint in one sitting. But the difference also is that like a cannabis smoker is more likely to deeply inhale and hold the smoke in their lungs longer, which can also irritate your lungs. So direct comparisons are pretty tricky.
You're smoking it differently, right? Yeah. So for vaping, can you explain like how that's different than smoking with a joint?
Yeah, vaping's interesting. There's a lot of different things to consider here. So generally, inhaling vapor is considered less harmful than inhaling smoke. There's less irritants involved. But there's two things to consider. One is like you can vape with a cartridge that can contain THC and other additives. The additives are the thing that concern a lot of researchers and medical professionals. In 2019, there was this notorious example where almost 3,000 people across the country were hospitalized, almost 70 people died. And it was connected to them vaporizing a cartridge that contained an additive called vitamin E acetate. And other additives that you find in cartridges, the effects of those on the body aren't yet well understood. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there. The alternative, though, is that you can vaporize the cannabis flower directly rather than a cartridge. That sounds like a more safer method, but you still have to consider the device that you're using to vaporize the flower.
Sure.
The heating coils of the device can degrade over time, and that can expose you to some harmful materials. As one researcher put it to me, was like the safety benefits of vaporizing flower, you can only realize that if the flower doesn't have any additives and if the vaporizing device is safe.
So finally, edibles, pros and cons for that.
Yeah, with edibles, I mean, it's a workaround for the respiratory issues that can come up with smoking or vaping. But the thing with edibles is that it's easier to overconsume them. They come in doses of, 5, 10 or more milligrams of THC at a time. That can be a problem for some people. The common scenario that happens a lot is someone takes an edible, and because they have a delayed onset of effects, people lose their patience and they think it's not working, so they take another dose.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're really high.
Yeah. It is them, yeah.
Medical interventions and hospital visits aren't common with people who use edibles. But I did find a study by the Colorado Department of Public Health that showed that hospital admissions for people who used edibles were disproportionately higher compared to those who were inhaling the product based on product sales. And so when you have too much THC in your system, it can lead to dizziness, nausea, vomiting, paranoia, increased heart rates, that sort of thing.
At the risk of losing my job, I will say there was experience I had with edibles where I didn't realize something wasn't edible. And then I had eaten something. It was a cookie. It was like a cookie. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll just eat a lot of food to try to like make up for that and to feel better. That was the opposite of what happened. Like I felt worse and I got really, really high in a very short period of time.
And that's the thing too. It's the opposite of alcohol. With alcohol, if you're drinking alcohol on an empty stomach, that will increase the effects of alcohol. But with cannabis, the effects can come on faster and they can come on more intense if you have a full stomach of food, especially if the food you eat is very fatty. So the effects of edibles can vary too, just depending on what you've eaten lately and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I wish I had known that.
Yeah.
I wish I had known that. So for people who are intrigued by legal cannabis but either haven't consumed before or don't do it like really frequently, what else should they maybe just know?
If you want to venture into the world of cannabis, what I've been told is that, you should start slow and build from there. So when it comes to edibles, start with a product that has 2.5 milligrams of THC. See how that goes the first time. And then maybe if you want to expand from there, you can. If you want to smoke, you should start with a product that contains 10% THC. And you can expand from there if you want to as well.
Finally, what should people know about maybe some of the long-term health impacts of marijuana?
So dependency can develop from frequent use. Basically, the two big things that I heard a lot were that frequent use and large doses of cannabis, that's what can create problems over time. What that can lead to is cardiovascular conditions like greater risks of heart attack and hypertension. It can also lead to cognitive functions, problems with memory, learning. And the risks are greater for people who are under the age of 25. Their brains are still developing. And it seems as if younger folks just seem to be a little bit more prone to chronic use and frequent use as well, which, again, is something that can lead to problems.
And while, you could have recreational marijuana now at 21, you still can't drive while being under the influence, right?
Right. And there's no legal limit to being under the influence of cannabis while driving. So if you're pulled over and if a police officer suspects that you're impaired, there's no test that I'm aware of that they can give you on the side of the road for cannabis. But if they can document that you're impaired, you can still get a DWI.
We do have a dispensary map on the Minnesota Star Tribune website. It's an interactive map of where you can legally buy cannabis in Minnesota. We'll link to that in our show notes. I think we're going to continue to update that as places open up. Elliot, thanks so much again for coming through, giving us the highs and lows, so to speak, of marijuana.
Yeah, thank you so much. Be safe, everybody.
We'll take a quick break, but stick around for a story about an upcoming event worth your time, especially if you're a book lover. This fall marks a milestone for a beloved story by a best-selling local author. 25 years ago, writer Kate DiCamillo published the book Because of Winn-Dixie. There's a celebration planned next week. Chris Hewitt is the Star Tribune's book editor, and we've asked him to come tell us why this book is still worth it. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how are you?
So Kate DiCamillo is a local author who's actually pretty famous.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about her.
Well, she grew up down south, but she moved here, I want to say 30-ish years ago. Most of her books are still set down south. In fact, Because of Winn-Dixie takes place in Florida. And a lot of them are about little girls who are kind of finding their way in the world, which is the case with this book. The main character's name is Opal. She and her dad moved to a small town, and her dad is a preacher and sort of starts an itinerant congregation. And she makes friends with everybody in town, including this dog who she names Winn-Dixie. And the dog seems kind of magical. Things start happening, good things start happening to all the people that Opal and the dog meet. And so in the end, it is said that all of these magical things happen because of Winn-Dixie, hence the title of the book. He's named after the grocery store chain, of course.
That's what when I think of Winn-Dixie, I was like, that's the reason, right?
That's where it comes from,
okay.
Yeah. And actually, I chatted with Kate DiCamillo about this 25th anniversary coming up, and she said, I know it sounds kind of corny to say this, but everything good that has happened to me also happened because of Winn-Dixie.
So it's a magical book.
The book and the dog.
Magical book.
It really is. It's a terrific book.
Well, what is she like? You've met her. What is she like?
Delightful. She's very self-deprecating. One other thing that she says pretty much every time I've ever interviewed her is, I'm not the one who's responsible for these books. I'm basically just a conduit, and I sit down at my word processor, and the people in their situations come to me. She says, this is a quote, I write behind my back. So she doesn't really kind of even know until the end what it is that she's written or what it means, because she's supposedly channeling these stories. I think she's being a little modest.
I'm a little modest. But
yeah, you don't write like
flow.
50 fantastic books without knowing what you're doing, obviously.
Why is this book so popular?
I think a lot of it has to do with how connected she is to who she was as a kid, and as a result, how connected she is to the kids she's writing for and meets at book events such as the one that's going to happen here next week. I just think she really knows how kids think and feel and can connect to the things that she thought and felt when she was a kid growing up, who, maybe felt like an outsider and had some of the issues that the kids in her stories feel. So I think that's a lot of it. And she's a very honest writer. She deals with some stuff that's difficult and that we kind of hope kids don't know about, but in fact, they probably have some awareness of. In this book, we talked about there's some alcoholism that is discussed. Her parents have apparently split up. We don't know the details there.
And I think somebody recently experienced like a death in the family as well.
Yep, there are lots of deaths in the family in her book, unfortunately. They're the kind of books that make you laugh, but also probably maybe make you cry a little bit too.
And that can be a bold choice in a children's book, but I'm guessing being able to go and talk about these things at a young age is probably healthy for kids.
Yeah, I mean, it probably feels like a safe place to think about these things. And particularly if you're reading with a parent or somebody, maybe you stop at some point in the book and say, well, let's talk about this. Or do you know what's going on here? Do you understand what that was? And it feels like a great way, to me, books feel like a great way to address some of those things.
So obviously the book had a very good reception back in 2000 and also with the movie. Why is it still kind of resonating with people or with children and families now?
I do think it's pretty timeless. I'm trying to remember if there are, for instance, cell phones in it. I don't think there's a lot that anchors it to – it definitely has a sense of place, but I don't think there's a lot that anchors it to a specific sense of time, and that's actually true of a lot of her books as well, which probably helps. And I think that's true of a lot of children's literature, too, that you kind of hope it's going to stand the test of time in that way, like A Wrinkle in Time and Ramona the Pest and those kinds of books. So I think it really kind of has entered that pantheon in terms of being a book that kids rediscover. And one thing that, as I was writing about this event that's happening next week, I discovered is that I know of at least one grandmother who's coming with her daughter, who's coming with her daughter, all of whom read it over the years. So
wow.
It's constantly finding new audiences, I think.
You keep talking about this event. Like,
sorry.
No, I was like, what is this
mysterious event?
This mysterious event. What is this event?
It is a screening of the movie at the Riverview Theater. At this point, I think there are still a couple of tickets, but it's definitely close to selling out if it hasn't sold out in the last day or so. And she's going to be there. She's going to introduce the movie, and then afterwards,
and the Riverview Theater in Minneapolis,
South Minneapolis.
Yes.
Yep. And the admission price, which I think is $20, also includes the book. So it's actually kind of a weird bargain.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome. And then I know we just recently, I feel like, just talked about the anniversary of The Great Gatsby. It seems like there's just been all these anniversaries coming up of classic books. Who organizes these?
The Great Gatsby one, I mean, 100 is a pretty big number.
It is a big year. Particularly
for a book that we're still talking about 100 years later. And that celebration was put together by the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library. And those events are still ongoing. They're having a full year of Gatsby events. This one, the publisher behind Because of Winn-Dixie, who publishes all of Kate DiCamillo's books, is mainly behind it. But they and the Riverview and Red Balloon are sponsoring this. And I think it's A, I'm sure they're hoping to sell some books.
Yeah.
But B, an acknowledgement that we're still talking about it. Here we are on the podcast talking about this book 25 years after it came out.
So Because of Winn-Dixie, is it worth it? Should I be putting it on my shelves for my child?
100%. It is a fantastic book, and it has that kind of feel of a book that's been around longer than 25 years. Like it's just kind of been with us.
Thanks so much for sharing about Because of Winn-Dixie. Stick around for a minute for the Minnesota Goodbye if you can.
Will do.
So tell me a moment from this week that was quintessentially Minnesotan to you.
So I've been doing these videos where I stop at Little Free Libraries and pick the best book in the Little Free Libraries, which I've been posting on Instagram. And I go on walks with a friend is usually when I discover these. And we started going walks after the pandemic. I realized as we were walking after the pandemic, like I would sometimes look at houses and be like, I don't know if that house needs shutters, or that is an ugly color of blue. And the more I did this during the pandemic, and particularly when we got to the point where there were Christmas decorations, I was like, wait a minute, all Christmas decorations are beautiful. Every bit of beauty we can stuff into our lives, we need to stuff into our lives.
Yes, yes.
And so I've been a little bit feeling that as I look at these little free libraries, and I'm like, all little free libraries are good. Maybe some of them are better than the other ones. So anyway, that feels like kind of a Minnesota nice moment to me, my realization that every little free library is our friend.
Yeah, every little book in there is great too, right?
Yeah.
Though I'm sure whatever book you said is the best one. It's probably really the best one.
There have been some good.
Sometimes because we have some over in our neighborhood too, sometimes I will sneak in like really good children's books that he doesn't use anymore. And so I'll try to, I won't put them all in one place. I'll put them in one little library and go a little bit further, put another one in another little library.
Like the Johnny Appleseed of children's literature in St. Paul.
Little St. Paul children's books, yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, who is getting rid of this fantastic book? Like, I'm a little bit outraged when I see it.
But you want to share it. You want to share it.
Yeah.
I guess my Minnesota moment is next week I'm actually going to be going on a group camping trip with our family. And we do this generally each year. But it's only been since I moved to Minnesota that I've been doing like huge group camping. Like I always felt like camping, you're trying to get away from people and like you want to go by yourself. But no, we have like 80 people.
80?
Yeah, I mean, I'm including like the kids and stuff. And
they count.
Yeah, they do, right? We got to put a life jacket on them. And so we can only do it at certain sites that can fit that. And so a lot of times we're at like places that maybe a church group runs, or there's some large group. There's only a few group campsites in the state at state parks that can fit like groups that large. And so we're actually going to Iowa this year.
Ooh.
And we rented actually a camper van to go, which is kind of going to be a fun little adventure in and of itself.
I hope you have a great time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you hopefully at a little free library around our neck of the woods. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. Bye. Worth It is a co-production of the Minnesota Star Tribune and Lemonada Media. It's hosted by me, Nicole Norfleet. The production team includes Melissa Townsend, Chrissy Pease, and Tiffany Bowie, with help from Zoe Jackson and Casey Darnell. This series is mixed by Johnny Vince Evans, with technical help from Matt Gilmer. Our theme was composed by Dan Malad. Lemonada's Senior Vice President of Weekly Content and Production is Steve Nelson, and the Star Tribune's Director of Audio and Video Initiatives is Jenny Pinkley. Executive producers are Stephanie Whittles-Wax and Jessica Cordova-Kramer. Help others find our show by leaving us a rating and writing a review. Follow Worth It wherever you get your podcasts, or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next week. Bye.